Welcome. Okay, so for anybody watching the recording, we were just talking about hitting the Firebase quota for the day, which is something that happens all the time and is totally fine. What we can do is spin up a new database and commit the changes, and you can all pull down those changes so you can have the most up-to-date database. But do you know why it's hitting the database so often?
It just happened about 4 minutes ago, so.
Is there like
it just happened for us too.
Because usually what happens is we'll hit these quotas when we're querying. It happens a lot for cohorts when they're doing filtering and the duplication logic and stuff, because it'll hit for every character entered sometimes, which will just be query, 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 right?
So yeah.
So that's a lot of times where you'll see it, and that's why it's important to use something like y'all have done, using context to pull down a local list so that you can cycle through that. So instead of hitting the database every time you want to search for something, you're just hitting that local context looking for it. So we'll temporarily work around it by putting together a new database, but it's something that you just want to be mindful of. If you notice we hit that again or something, it's those database queries can be expensive, not just expensive money. That's not an issue, but as far as performance goes, if you don't have to reach all the way out to the database, then that's a good thing. So keep it in mind when you're building things that hitting the database can make us hit quotas. Anyway, we will cross that bridge after this meeting, but can we see what you've built? Do some demos? And I know neither of them are pushed to production yet, so if you just want to demo locally, that will work. Whoever wants to start.
So it's not working locally for us because it doesn't load.
Okay.
Because we're exceeding the quota.
Gotcha. Okay, well then in that case, let's do this. Give me 1 sec. I'm going to pop into, actually I'll just show you what I'm doing. Share my screen so that you can all follow along. Share screen. Here it is. Okay, I'm going to pop into Firebase real quick. Firebase. And of course, Zoom is in the way anytime I need to do anything. Okay, so we have TCL 8. That's the one we're working on right now. Let's just spin up another one, temporary, and continue through it. Select an account. I don't want to. Do I have to configure the analytics? I don't want to configure analytics. Fine.
I think it's because of the uncheck on the previous screen.
Ah.
It trips you up. It has it automatically selected.
Well, now we're gonna work with analytics, I guess. No, this should be in place for a day, so. And it'll be here if we need it again for any other reason. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into the settings for this, pass you over the keys so that you can plug them in locally, and then we should be able to see these demos. Let's see, project settings maybe. If anybody knows off the top of their head how to get to the keys, let me know. I see the key there, but there's a place where you should be able to get copy and paste them. Service accounts.
Is it not under the general settings right there?
It should be a whole.
Oh, you have to create an app first.
Oh, good idea.
So,
okay, let's see.
Yeah, create a
app, temp app. Don't need to set up hosting. Looking at those check boxes now. Okay, here we go. I'm going to copy and paste this to the chat. Actually, I'll do it in Slack. TCL 8 and okay. So if you want to grab that and paste it under the Firebase config instead, hopefully hopefully that will solve our problems. I'm going to stop my screen share so that whoever's doing it can screen share and we can work through any issues. We'll try and like blow through these demos kind of quick so that we can do the learning module and everything as well. And I know we've got some issues to kind of like finalize before we get started on next week's work. Whoever wants to start is welcome to screen share while you work through this if you want.
Sorry, I might not be able to screen share because I'm like running out of disk space on my
Oh, I can do ours. Like,
Yeah.
although to be fair, my computer's back here humming. So let's see.
No worries.
Did the new database thing work for you guys?
Give me just a second, and I will let you know.
It gives me another error, so that's why.
What's the error say?
It says Firestore could not reach. Let me just paste it in the.
Would you mind sharing your screen and we'll take a look at it?
Oh, actually, that's a good idea too.
Yeah, mine seems to have worked. So.
Oh, it worked. Okay. Maybe let me.
Once you redo, like replace the config, try restarting your local server.
Okay, yeah, that's a thing I did not do. I just did it for this one. So let's see. I just.
Did you like from your terminal stop the server there and restart it?
Yep. Let's do it again.
Yeah, let's try.
Yeah, it's getting me there.
Weird. So when you go to
Maybe it's just my internet not working properly. Maybe because that's the line it says. This typically indicates that your device.
And
Alright,
that wasn't there before, so
Ali, you said yours is good, right?
Yeah, give me just a second.
We'll start with Allie's demo and then we'll come
Sure.
back around and see if that's working out.
We're having thunderstorms here in Middle Tennessee, and I know Shajia and I are in the same area, so my internet has not been great. I actually gave a conference talk on Friday morning, and there was a period where the connection was not wonderful, so that kind of sucked.
Oh.
That's the worst.
Okay. Can we see my screen okay?
Sure can.
Okay, so our issue was to be able to join an existing shopping list. So, in theory, we should be able to. Oh, right, because I did that, didn't I?
If you create a new list, yeah, you can just grab that token.
So, we got that, and then there we go. In theory, you should enter this, and this is where we're running into, we have two different user tokens going on, and I don't understand.
Yeah, it looks like the one there is one being generated by that library that we were using.
One thing's generated by the UUID 4 package in the add item, and that is sitting saved to local storage here.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the welcome, we're using the get token that I think Andrew gave us, and that's what's getting saved to local storage here. So somewhere in there, we're swapping tokens.
Totally. We need to get rid of anything referencing that that external package that was imported. So once you get rid of that and you replace everything with the same token, the one that's created with the get token script that Andrew provided us with, then that should be all good to go. So
yeah, because then once you go to the list automatically pulls the items that are associated with that token.
Perfect. Yeah, that'll be great. So what we'll do is after this call, we'll try and make sure that like we get all those squared away, hopefully by the end of the day today, so that we can move on to the next issues. But yeah, it looks to me like we just need to make sure that we're only using the get token logic, and we should be good to go. And again, like when we switch that data, like when we're using the old database, you'll have access to all those old lists you were creating with items and stuff, and you'll be able to go in.
Can I see an example in the code of the logic that needs to be removed, like one of the old references?
We're referencing this.
I think when for one of the issues, our issue was dependent on creating a user token. So I think it was Lily and I who were working on this, and then we imported this package, but we forgot to, I think, delete it when our code merged into the database. So that is our old code, which should have been deleted.
So where is that generating that token? Oh,
in the use effect right down here in add item. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so in that use effect, and what component are we in right now? What file?
This is the add item.
Okay, so when we're adding an item, yeah, we don't need to use effect at all because we don't need to be doing any token logic over here. All we need to be doing is pulling the token from local storage or from a local context or wherever you want to pull it from into this so that you can send it to Firebase. So I think if you get rid of that use effect and let's see, local storage, the local storage.
And feel free as we're talking through this as a group to make a comment. If you want to, like a to-do comment, if you don't want to take the action right now.
Yeah, I'm afraid to mess with it too much while we're just sitting here because I don't want to.
Yeah. But if you make a comment, that's super safe, right? And you'll have it there in the code. I try to keep comments as close to the code as possible rather than in a notepad or someplace else. Sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you, Stacie. I just thought might be helpful in the moment.
That is very helpful. That's perfect. Yeah.
I think like for me, when I was testing your branch, what I did was that I just got rid of use effect and it perfectly worked because so the token is generated from app.js and just removing that works perfectly. Use effect.
Try and do the new list first.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's a great token.
Right, and then I need to.
No shopping list still with that. Okay, we'll look into that. I wonder if it has anything to do with like the database or something.
That's what I'm wondering.
Okay, cool. Well, it seems like you have the right idea and it seems like we're like almost there. So we'll just make sure we get this wrapped up by end of day and we'll be able to get it merged. Does the other pair want to show us like where you're at on yours and we can see if there's anything we need to answer or talk about, or if you're ready to demo, then we can just demo.
It's still not working for me.
Yeah, database is not working for me as well.
Okay. How about y'all had some like a context provider in yours? Would you mind kind of just walking us through the code that you wrote without actually demoing it locally? And then we can. Context is like super powerful and I love it. And I think that it's going to come in handy in like multiple places. So it's like, if everybody can understand context a little better, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Let me share my screen. Okay, so basically, this is a high level why we're using context. It just helps us organize our data So when we're making an application, we have to pass the data, communicate between different components, whether it's siblings or parent, children, or grandparent and grandchild. We pass data to different components a lot. And it can get very tedious to pass one piece of information from grandparent to a grandchild component. So we would need to pass it from a grandparent to the parent and to the grandchild. When maybe the parent component does not need that information. And it can get very complicated and complex when it's a lot of nested components. So that's where something like Context API comes in, that at the very top level of the application, all of our data that is supposed to be shared between different components stays. And we can have update functions in that component. So for example, here we have a shopping list, and we're not updating anything, but for example, if we have to update the shopping list, actually we are updating the shopping list here, but so we will be adding functions here, and we will pass down the state and as well as the functions. So in case if we need to update the state from a different component, all we need to do is pass down that function here, and then we can update it. So for example, here, there's a state called shopping list. What happens when the component mounts, we get the shopping list from the database, and then we set the state. So when the component mount, the shopping list is populated with the data in the database. And we just added this because this will mount again this component when our shopping list is updated. I will get back to this, but for just start from the beginning again. So we are updating the shopping list here whenever this component is mounted. This is simply just accessing our shopping list state. So we pass down this shopping list here. So now here's two things. There's something called the provider, and there's something called the consumer. So we will come to the consumer part, but the provider part, basically what it does, it provides the data that you're going to be working with. So right now for this application, the only data we're working with is shopping list. And this is like my high level understanding of things, so I might be wrong, so please feel free to jump in and explain if there's something that I am, So the provider is basically the data that you're going to be working with. So this pass down the data that you're going to be working with. And in order to access the data, we use something called the consumer. If I move this out of the way and see. So here, so I think here we are using another. Okay, let's just go to the app.js. It's very confusing, I know. So we have this whole class component which we are exporting. We import it to the app.js. So we can import it anywhere, but since we need the data to be all over the application, we are going to wrap our app component with the user provider. It's pretty much the same way as we wrap our browser router and the Firestore provider around our application. It's the same logic. That's the same reason why we're wrapping our the context, our application with the context, so that all our application components has the data that we are going to be using there. Again, we can wrap, so we can have the user provider wrap around here as well. So it's the same law. We can do it either in index.js, or we could do it on the app. So it works either ways. So here we have the user provider, and we can just go and do exactly how we were doing our logic before inside the user provider. But now if we want to use the shopping list, which we defined here. So if I want to use the shopping list in one of my components, instead of passing it down to all of the components, I can directly access it here. I can access it here using the use context API. I think this is because it's a functional component. I can use context. If it was a class component, I believe I would have to use the consumer API. I can show, actually closed it, but we can get to that. But so in a functional component, in order to access the data in the context.js, we just import it like this. So we're using the destructuring, we would say const get shopping list, use context, and we're going to pass the user context that we created over here. So this was the main thing that I forgot. So in order to create a context, we need to create a create context object like this, which we will be using, which we will export here, and we will use in our functional components. So the good thing about it is that we don't need to access all of the state in the context. We can only access the state we need. So for example, if we had like multiple, let's say if we had like a multiple state, we don't need to use is loading in here, so we don't need to access it. We will just access the one we want, which is get shopping list. And then we can just access the shopping list here. That's what we're doing. We say const item is equals to get shopping list. So items now is basically all of the items that we have in our database, if that makes sense. I know that's
love it. That was a beautiful explanation. I love it so much. So like high level, what's happening is you're creating a space for all the data for your app to live so that you can access it from whatever component you want. And that was a beautiful walkthrough of like how you're actually going to like be, you know, utilizing that context and pulling that data. A plus of a freaking perfect explanation. This is like gonna like be really helpful because all of you are going to be interacting with this data at some point, and you're going to be filtering the data, and you're going to be like manipulating it in different ways. And this can all be done right there. So all of the like list data logic stays in one place. So really good job. Very, very good.
Yeah, really
I'll be excited
nice.
to see this in action. Cool. Well, then, do you all know? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I just had a question about how to use like the context shopping list right now. So for example, in Alien, my component from the welcome tab where we're like hitting the database, is that something we could then like prevent hitting the database there?
Totally. Yeah. You would just like that's exactly right. You would reach out to the context instead. The way the context should work is that like anytime the component mounts, it will go like grab whatever's in the list. And until that's been updated, it shouldn't be changing at all. So you shouldn't have to reach out to the database at all, except for in that one place. Or if you're adding data. One of the cool things too about that, I think I just sent over some details about functional components versus class components. And one thing that I like about functional components is it makes it easier to read and understand, I think. I think a lot of people think. But when you use a use effect instead of component did mount and component did update, what you can do is say like, you can think of the use effect kind of like as a component did mount. And then you can say in its dependency array, like, what do you want to watch for? So in your dependency array, you can say like, I want to watch for like the list. So anytime the list changes, then rerun this effect. And so it like, I feel like helps you wrap your mind around like, when is this effect running versus like, when are these components did update and did mount running and what are they doing? Kind of like consolidates them, makes it, I guess, a little easier to understand. So very cool. We can maybe do like one of those week sessions where we were like pairing on refactoring to like run through that or something. But yes, Lily, reaching out to the context for that will be super valuable and save us from hitting the database quotas. Great question. Okay, so does everybody know like what needs to be done to wrap up these issues? Everybody has an idea of like how to move forward with that, other than like getting the database to work on yours. Obviously, it's not ideal.
Yeah, if we have time, can I just hear from the pairs about what y'all think your next steps are?
I love that. And we do have time and we can do it right now. So if anybody wants to jump in.
I think Luca and I were able to, like, we were just testing one more thing and it stopped working. So I think we're good to go. Like, we're done. We were just testing one last time to see if everything is working. Once we have, I still cannot access the database. I will look around it later. But I just have to check if it's working. If it's working, I think we're done.
Cool. On yours, would you mind pushing up like the most recent code that you have? Because then we could pull it down on our end and see if we can get like the database stuff to work.
And one more thing I think we will change is we want to switch to functional component for use context. So right now it's class component, but we will try to like switch to functional component.
I love it. I love that so much. If you don't get around to that today or don't have time to do it, we'll just send it up with a class component, which is totally fine. And we'll go from there. Great work.
Awesome.
Team Lily.
Lily.
Yeah, I figured. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Lily.
The token issue that like we were okay. I got rid of the use effect on our end, and then like the token was like that 3-worded string. And then I think the issue is that it doesn't get saved to the database until we actually like add an item, which we weren't doing in our test just before. So I think that might be why it's like not. Yeah, it's just not actually getting saved to Firebase.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So we definitely want to make sure as soon as it's created, like as soon as that new list button is clicked, that it's also adding that new document to Firestore. So that might be worth looking into.
Yeah, we never actually ended up restructuring our database. We ended up just doing like a .where on the token. So I think that might actually require us to probably restructure them.
So I like wasn't following along super close with the restructuring that you were talking about, but it's like you can have like you should still be able to do the. Actually, I don't want to give you bad advice because I actually don't know what the structure of the database is right now. But you should be able to structure it in any way. What I would recommend is that every item has a token on it, like so that you can like do something like .where and get all of the items. With that, you can also, I think, were you talking about doing like you have a document for each list and then within that item documents?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. It's currently set up to just add each item with a token. With that, so then you just pull all the items and filter on the token. But that means that when we hit the create a new list button, the only thing the new list button does,
I see,
is save to local storage.
Got it. Yeah. So
because
I think
there's no way to
just
create a list.
Right. I think that then what you're saying about creating like list documents, well, you don't even have to do it nested. You don't necessarily have to create like list documents and then inside of that item documents. You can also just like high level create lists. And then you also high level create items, and within items are all the items. And if each item has a token, then you can say like, here's just like a bunch of lists, and they just have matching tokens in them, kind of. If that makes sense. That was like very poorly explained. But what I'm trying to say is like any way you want to do this, I think that we can work with. So whatever is there, we can figure a way to make it work. If you want to do that restructuring now, that's fine too. I'm happy to pair on it too later tonight if any of you still need to. Thoughts?
I love to hear next steps. That makes me feel good, especially as we're transitioning to new pairs this week. Mm-hmm. It kind of makes me think of the continuity, that we're all in this together. And even as we transition to a new pair, we're still a team working on the app together.
For sure. I love it. Yeah, that's why like we can get these ones wrapped like by end of today or tomorrow, then we can like more seamlessly move on to the next one without kind of like mixing it all up. But that's another reason to keep in mind, like just meet the basic acceptance criteria. So if you don't have time to refactor the component into a functional component, or if you don't have time to restructure the database the way that you want, just move forward with putting in the work to meet those acceptance criteria. And throughout the week, we can return to those other things. And you can create like completely separate PRs that have nothing to do with like your weekly task. If you're like, this PR just refactors this functional component or whatever, to kind of like segment out that work a little bit. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to do a super duper duper quick, I'm going to make it even shorter than usual, presentation on pair programming. So let me share my screen with you and pop over here. Pair programming. How do I zoom? Go on get present. And of course, probably go back to the beginning would be helpful. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Y'all can see it? Good. Okay. So by now, I think that you've all pair programmed with everybody, right? It's like, I think about week 3, everybody should have paired with everybody. Anyway, you've had quite a bit of experience pair programming at Collab Lab, maybe some experience pair programming before that, but I wanted to go over pair programming so that, and yes, this date is wrong and I'm noticing that right now, so that you have an idea of how you might be able to make the experience a bit more efficient, or kind of like tie up some loose ends where you might not have quite known what to do. So let's take a look. Pair programming traditionally, in like the in-person human sense, which what is that? I don't know anymore, is 2 developers sitting together working on code from the same keyboard. Remotely, it's a little different, obviously, and we'll talk about that. But basically, there's 2 roles. There's the driver and the navigator. And the driver is one controlling the keyboard, putting all the syntax in place to build the thing. They're verbalizing their whole process and talking through it so that the navigator understands where they're going. The navigator is paying close attention to the code that's being written, and they're asking questions and they're researching things and offering suggestions as they come up, so that they're kind of working together to build this thing, but in 2 distinct roles for efficiency. So you can make sure like all your bases are getting covered. It's great. Okay. So pair programming remotely can look a number of different ways. There are so many different tools out there that you can use to get the job done, right? And I think largely at Collab Lab anyway, we mostly just do a Zoom meeting and you can like share your screen. And even on Zoom, you can take control of the other person's screen if you need to for whatever reason. But there's like IDEs that allow you to collaborate and a bunch of other tools that I totally suggest trying out if you're feeling adventurous and want to explore what's out there. But in general, the way that it will work are 2 developers hop on a call and screen share together. The driver shares their screen and they're the one who's actually coding, while the navigator's on their end doing the research, asking the questions, you know, giving them the feedback that they need. Then once you like get to a stopping point, and I recommend that every single time you pair program, you each get to play both roles at least once, because they both give you such unique skills that the other doesn't. Like as a driver, you're going to get skills that you don't get as the navigator and vice versa. So you want to be sure you're doing both. So once you're done driving, set a timer or just say, when we get to the end of this part, we're going to switch. The driver's going to push the code up to the remote repo and the navigator's going to pull it down. And then you're going to flip and start back at step 1. It also like, not only do you get like different skills from those roles, but it gives you a different familiarity with the code, right? So you can like, when you're actually doing the syntax and writing out the code, I feel like you have a deeper understanding of where everything is happening, rather than if you're a navigator and you're just kind of watching, it's harder to feel, I guess, like connected with it and be able to like navigate through it seamlessly. So you want to get your hands on the code, you want to watch, you want to drive, do both. Very important. Okay. Let's see. Can we switch to the next screen, please? Oh, no, we can't. Sorry, y'all, technical difficulties. Okay, mindset and attitude. So it's all about collaboration and exploration whenever it comes to this. It's like you want to have a beginner's mindset, it says here. You want to kind of like look at things with fresh eyes, ask a lot of questions, and get to the bottom of what's actually being built. And verbalizing these things as you're building helps make sure that you have like clean code that's easy for everyone to understand. It also helps because you kind of like get into your own head. I'm sure we've all done this, where you're working on a project, like working on some kind of issue. You're like, I have this really great solution. And as you start explaining it to somebody, you're like, this might be more complex than it needs to be. And I would have probably known that had I tried verbalizing my thought process throughout building it. So come in with a beginner's mind and beginner's eyes and try and create the cleanest, simplest code that you can to solve the problem. It's not about teaching or mentorship. It's about working together. Again, coming at it with like new eyes. Like when your navigator is watching you, they should be coming at it and like trying to make it make full sense to them because they know things that you don't know. And you know things that they don't know. So as you're pair programming, you want to be talking the whole time. Like everything you do, you want to be like explaining in some way so that you both are learning from each other. It's an opportunity to learn. Drivers, you want to seek agreement before proceeding. So if you're like getting ready to build a filter and you're like, oh, I'm going to like do this, filter on the array or whatever you're going to do, instead of just going to do it first, verbalize it first and explain what exactly you're thinking so that those questions can be asked and you're giving that outlet to collaborate and not just taking the reins and driving without getting any other input. And navigators, you want to ask instead of telling. So as you are looking things up, or if you're noticing like this person is putting this filtering method in play, ask them why they're doing it if you don't understand. Like instead of telling them, oh, don't use that method, we're going to use this method instead. Ask and like open up that conversation so that you can see the different perspectives. Somebody's going to learn something, probably everybody's going to learn something. So how would you all say this aligns with your pair programming experience at Collab Lab so far? Are there things that you saw here that you want to implement? Are there things that you did that weren't included here that you think should be? How's it been going?
I mean, that's more or less how Lily and I went about it the other day. Or everybody. So
good. Have you all been able to like switch and do both roles every time?
I think more or less, yeah.
Good. That's super important. I feel like pushing code up and pulling it down and stuff feels daunting in the beginning. And so people will avoid it and they're like, I'll just do all this and then push it up later. But it's like, if you can get into the habit, like get into the routine of doing that, then you're going to become just so much more familiar with the Git process. And again, the code that you're writing together. What other things, like what things have worked for you or what things did you really like? Oh, that was a good pairing session because XYZ.
I think we're, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say for this week, and I think because we had like 3 or 4 different ACs, so the first time we met, we were able to like divide our work that, okay, you work on this thing, I will work on this one, and by this day we're going to meet. And then when we met that day, we were able to go like what I worked, and I was able to, okay, this is what I've done. And if Luca had any questions, he'd be like, okay, I don't understand how or why. And I explained him. And then the same for him, that he explained what he was doing. And if I didn't understand anything, I was like, okay, how did you do this? Or I didn't know this, how did you do this? So I think that was a great way of learning. But it also worked because we had like different ACs, so we were able to divide that, like all that work into different parts. But yeah.
And to add on top of that, I think we also collaborated really well with like issues after reviews. Like we kind of like jumped in and I was navigating at some point, and then the other time Shajia was driving and or she was navigating. So it was very like we did both kind of throughout this time. So it was great.
I love that. I love that for like fixing issues, because when you are like individually coding on it, you each know different pieces of the puzzle. And if you can just get together on a call and like talk through it, it's so much quicker and easier than trying to like communicate async sometimes. So never be afraid to hop on a video call with your partner. It will save you time significantly, I promise. Anybody else want to share about how it's going? If not, we can move on to what next week will look like. Cool. I hope this gives you a better sense of like how to pair program, or if you're already doing it like exactly like this, confidence in knowing that you're doing it really well, so that you can be set up for success. Talking through it is like my favorite part of pair programming, is having to like explain what you're doing, because it like helps you just solidify those concepts and really seek out like where those holes are in your knowledge. Like, oh, I actually have no idea why I'm doing this. I just always have done it like this. And then if your partner doesn't know, you can go look it up together and then everybody learns. And it's great. Okay, let me share my screen with you again and we'll see what's going on next week. Full transparency, I haven't looked yet, so I don't actually know. My screen is acting all wacky. What's going on here? Oh, I see. It's because I have this up still. Got it. Okay, so it looks like these two are still in progress. We're going to get those moved over by end of day today or Monday. And then the next ones we're going to do are issue number 7. As a user, I want to see a welcoming prompt to add my first item if my list is empty to help me get oriented to how the app works. Whoever works on this one, I strongly recommend checking out the example app to see how it's done over there, because it might not be as complex as you think. So check that out. This one is very like UI heavy, obviously. And then this one is, as a user, I want to mark an item on my shopping list as purchased. And this one will be more involved with the database and basically just saying, I purchased this item. So if we pop over to, we could zoom out of the way, down to the project brief. That's where I want to go to see who the pairs are. Yep. Project brief. And we're in week, oh my gosh, 4 already? Is that right? Holy cow. Wow, really?
Yes,
Oh my
yes.
God. Okay. Week 4, Lily and Luca are going to be together, and Stacie and Ali are going to be together. Any of those issues stand out to either one of you, UI or database? Probably everybody's right now like, I don't want to work with the database because I can't get access to it.
I was going to say, I haven't had a chance to work with the database, but I know Ali has been working with the database.
Oh, that's fine. It's fine. We can take the database if you want to. I'm good.
I love it. I love that.
Awesome. Yes. Okay. So let me pop back over here because I'm working very efficiently today, obviously.
You're doing great.
Okay. Let's see. Mark an item. I'm not at my house, as you can probably tell. So I'm like, I don't have my setup. Stacie and Ali are on this one. Good. And we'll move that. I'm going to go ahead and move it over to in progress. And then Luca and Lily will be here. I don't know why I clicked that. Luca and Lily.
And I'll go with Luca and Lily today.
Okay. Sounds good. Let me take myself off this real quick, Stace.
I haven't done a breakout room with Luca yet, so it's time.
Sure. All right. Okay. So let me stop my screen share. Okay. We're going to continue working with our pairs from last week to wrap up our issues today or tomorrow. And then like today and tomorrow, you can still be planning with your next pair, like when you're going to pair and what you're going to work on and stuff if you want. But let's try and get those wrapped up first, just so we can kind of like keep our heads straight around it. And we'll break off into these breakout rooms to kind of like talk over the high level of what we're going to do on these ones. And yeah, that's it. Any other questions or thoughts before I break us out?
I had 2 super quick ones.
Sure.
So next week will be our halfway mark in the program and our next retro. So be thinking this week, making notes to self wherever you like to keep notes, of things that you want to add to our retro board. And that board is already up in our projects. So if you want to just go ahead and add things, you totally can. But I just wanted to make that shout out as another way to help your future self. We will still have time next Sunday during the meeting to type like we did last time, but just a heads up. And I am going to be out on Tuesday and possibly Wednesday. I've asked Andrew to, basically be in my place on those days because it's likely I will not be available. But I'm really excited for y'all and for this weekend. I hope you don't feel any anxiety or stress at all about wrapping up your issues from this week as you start a new one. You all have a very clear plan, and this is very, very normal. So you are doing so great, and this is going so well. And I'm just so excited for you for yet another week at Collab Lab.
Yay! Yes, Adrian's so right. This is so normal. And I think it's like, I'm so glad, Adrian, that you asked, like, what is your plan? Because that's something that you're going to need to do, like, IRL on a dev team. Not that this isn't a real life dev team, because it absolutely is. But like the planning part of it is such a huge piece of the puzzle, like more so than writing code and getting PRs up. It's like planning and be able to execute on those plans is incredibly critical skill to have. Okay. On that note, I'm going to open these breakout rooms and we'll talk about what's going to happen next week. Keep us all up to date in Slack about when PRs are ready to be reviewed and what we need to do to help you. Okay? All right,
great.
breaking out. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Stacie.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Bye.
Open rooms. All right, let's go.
Join.
Hi. Okay. Database stuff. Oh, did I go to the right one? Yeah, this is the wrong one. Good. Okay, let me open the issue real quick. Oh, you know what? I'll go ahead and share my screen. Why not? Or do you want to share your screen and then you can be like taking notes? That actually might be helpful.
I can share mine if you want me to.
Sure. Shazia, that was an incredible explanation of context. I loved it.
Can you see the...
I see issue number 8.
Cool. All right.
Awesome. So if you just want to read through it and we'll kind of talk about like just what you think.
All right.
One thing that's like sets this app aside that I feel like always confuses people and confused me for sure for a very long time was that when you initially add the item to the list, it's like you bought it for the first time. So that's like the first purchase date. So it's not like a shopping list in the sense of like, I'm going to make a list and then I'm going to go to the store and buy those things. I mean, you could use it like that, but it's kind of structured more in the way of like, you're buying things and adding them to the list so that you know when you'll need to buy them again. And so when you initially create that item, it's as if you're like, I'm buying this item now, and I'm going to keep the app up to date on when I'm buying it so that it can start telling me when I need to buy it. So you enter the item, and that's like your first purchase. And then if you click the button, like this button that we're going to create, or checkbox or whatever it might be, that's like another purchase. So we'll have to like re-record a purchase date.
Okay.
Anyway, what thoughts do you have here? What isn't clear? What should we talk through?
But just to confirm, so if the item is already in the list, that means we've already purchased it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then why do we need a checkbox?
Great question. Okay, so the way that the app will work is you purchase the item, and then the whole purpose of this app is to predict when you'll need items again. That's like the smart shopping list part of it. Okay. So you go to the store and you buy apples, right? And it's on your list. And you say, I need to purchase this again soon. So the app will know that it needs to show you that soon because you put soon on it. So then you go to the store again and you purchase those apples again. So you click the button saying purchased. And then for the next 24 hours, it's going to show like as crossed off or whatever because you just purchased it. And then in the back end, the app's going to start like calculating like, oh, well, she said she needed to buy it soon the first time, but then she didn't actually buy it for like 3 weeks. So I'm going to say she probably needs this like not so soon and like adjust the status accordingly and like give you a next purchase date accordingly. So you'll need the button when you go buy that item again because the app's going to tell you to go buy it again.
I see. Okay.
So ideally, like say like 3 weeks down the line, you've been using the app a lot. 3 weeks down the line, you're at the store, you can log into your app and it's like, you're going to need to buy these 5 things based on what we know about you. And you can be like, oh, great, got it. Check, 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 bought those 5 things. And then for 24 hours, those will stay checked so that it's like, if you're still at the store, you can keep track of it. But then after 24 hours, it'll like, the new calculations will be in there.
So just to, I know this is not one of the ACs, but just wondering, would this application send a notification, like somewhere, like one of the issues is it like send a notification to the user that, hey, you know, like let's say if it was 7 days has been passed and you said that you were going to buy apples after 7 days, it's been 7 days. Is that one of the ACs?
I don't think there's a notification one, but that would be a really cool feature request to add like as an issue. That would be like an amazing one to show off like in an interview or something. Like, this is where I think we should take it next. But it will calculate and give you like, I think there's an issue saying like if it's invalid, like if you said you were going to buy it in 7 days, but then you didn't buy it for 14 days, like 2 times that, then consider it invalid and send it to the bottom of the list.
I see. Okay.
But that's a really good idea. I love it. What other thoughts? Let's read through these real quick. Okay, so user is able to tap a checkbox or some kind of UI element to say it's purchased. That's pretty self-explanatory, I think. The item should be shown as checked for 24 hours after the purchase is made. So you check the box, a new time is going to be stored in the database. And then we'll need somewhere like in the UI that will say, if that purchase date is like less than 24 hours, apply this styling or whatever it might be. So you can do like, you know, a strike through, or you can make it like transparent or something. Just make sure it's also accessible so that if somebody can't see that it's strike through or transparent, they'll know. Okay, let's see, add a property to the item for the number of purchases. Okay, so we'll want to be calculating. So again, the first time it's purchased or added to the list, that'll be 1. And then so when you click this box, that will always be at least number 2. So it seems like we'll need to change some logic in the add item. If we're not already calculating the number of purchases, which we might be, I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
Okay, so we'll need to add that so that we can keep this running total. And then some logic that'll say like, when the button's clicked, what is that number? And let's add 1 to it. Sound good? Other questions on that one?
So instead of having duplicates, if you want to add that again, we will just add like do 1 plus to the item.
So this isn't necessarily like more of that item. This is just how many times we purchased it.
I see, okay.
So like when we add apples to the list, it should record as 1 in the database. When we purchase it, it'll add another 1. And this number is gonna go into play when it's like giving you an average of how often you buy it. Like when we build that algorithm, it'll look to see like, okay, she's bought apples 5 times, and first time it was within 7 days, second time it was 14, third, fourth, and then it'll average those out to say like, okay, it looks like she buys apples about every 4 days. So we'll give her that as like an estimate. You'll probably need to buy apples again in 4 days.
Makes sense, okay.
Cool. Any other questions? I know it's kind of like, you're probably not jumping fully into it because you're like, I still have these other issues to wrap up, but if you do have questions, we're here for you.
Cool. Yeah, I've got us a bit of a checklist here.
Looks great. I love the checklist.
Cool.
Good. All right. Well, then I will leave y'all to it. I'm gonna